Hello everyone. I'm I almost said youth Pastor Emmanuel. I'm actually news reporter Jack, and I'm here in Harlem. And today, as I understand, we're going to be talking about mothers with an attitude. You think that's a good thing? Does your mother have an attitude? I'm not too sure if mine does. Anyway, I haven't seen Mom just in a day. I'm sorry, everyone. Mothers with an attitude. We have to go to, I'm going to get it straight this time, Youth Pastor Emmanuel, see what he has to say, and then from there, I believe we'll be going to Mr. Antonio's class. Are you guys getting tired of looking at Mr. Antonio's class? I'm not, but let's find out what's happening. I'm sorry. Let's go on, guys. Okay, everybody, this is Youth Pastor Emmanuel, and I'm here today to talk about mothers with an attitude. Now, attitudes don't have to be bad. Attitudes can be good. And I'm going to talk to you today from 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5. And Paul writes this to Timothy. He says, I am reminded of your sincere faith, which was first lived in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, and I am persuaded now lives in you also. Well, mothers love children and pass on courage, love, and help their children to achieve what it is they can do in life. Fathers play a big role in that too. Timothy became a big leader in the church. His mother and grandmother lived with boldness and allowed him to preach the gospel. Now, he preached the gospel when he went with Paul, and he became converted into Christianity. But his mother was Jewish, his father was a Greek, and the thing is that, Timothy grew in faith. Now, Timothy became an overseer or a bishop in the church in Macedonia. And Paul put Timothy in charge of the church and gave him instructions as to how to lead the church. And that's why he wrote 1 and 2 Timothy. Timothy's faith began with women who poured into his life, and they took the effort to help Timothy out. But what they were doing, they probably didn't know it at the time, was they were giving Timothy the courage and the boldness to move forward in life. Now, as I understand, we're going to learn how women played a significant role in the African American journey, and you're going to learn more about that in Mr. Antonio's class. But I just wanted to come to you today and share a small word with you. Okay? Now, you guys take care, and I'll speak to you a little bit later. Okay, everybody. We're going to get started, and today we're going to be Shaniqua, you have a question? What's your question, Shaniqua?
Yes, Mr. Antonio. I want to know, why do we always hear about men, and we don't learn anything about African American women that did things that help other people? Yeah, so I want to know, tell me about the African American women. I know they did things.
Okay, Shaniqua, that's a very good question, and I believe it deserves an answer. So, I'm going to answer it today, and we're going to be talking about 3 women that were mothers, and they had an attitude. Attitudes don't have to be bad. They had good attitudes. The first person we're going to talk about is Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells Barnett was born on July 16, 1862 in Holly Springs, Mississippi. She passed away on March 25th, 1931 in Chicago, Illinois. She was an American journalist who led an anti-lynching crusade in the United States in the 1890s. She later was an activist promoting justice for African Americans. Ida Wells was born into slavery. She was educated at Rusk University and a freedmen's school in her native Holly Springs, Mississippi. And at age 14, she began teaching in a country school. She continued to teach after moving to Memphis, Tennessee in 1884 and attended Fisk University in Nashville during several summer sessions. In 1887, the Tennessee Supreme Court reversed a circuit court decision ruling against Wells in a suit she had brought against the Chesapeake and Ohio Railroad for having been forcibly removed from her seat after she refused to give it up for one in the colored-only car. Using the pen, Ida Wells in 1891 wrote some newspaper articles critical of education available to African American children. Her teaching contract was not renewed. She thereupon turned to journalism, buying an interest in the Memphis Free Speech. In 1892, after three of her friends had been lynched by a mob, Wells began an editorial campaign against lynching that quickly led to the sacking of her newspaper office. In other words, they destroyed it. She continued her anti-lynching crusade, first as a staff writer for the New York Age and then as a lecturer and organizer of anti-lynching societies. She traveled to speak in a number of major U.S. cities and twice visited Great Britain for the cause. In 1895, she married Ferdinand Barnett, a Chicago lawyer, editor, and public official, and adopted her name, Wells Barnett. From that time, she restricted her travels, but she was very active in Chicago affairs. Wells Barnett contributed to the Chicago Conservator, her husband's newspaper, and to other local journals published detailed information about lynching. She wrote a book called A Red Record in 1895, and it was she was active in organizing African American women in various causes, from anti-lynching campaign to the suffrage movement. From 1898 to 1902, Wells Barnett served as secretary of the National Afro-American Council. In 1909, she participated in the meeting of Niagara movement and the founding of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP. That's where it sprang from, the Niagara movement. Although she was initially left off the NAACP's controlling committee of 40, Wells Barnett became a member of the organization's executive committee. However, disenchanted with the NCAA's white and African American elite leadership, she soon distanced herself from the organization. Do you have a question, Shaniqua?
I have a question. All I want to know is, did Ida B. Wells, she was with the NAACP? I didn't know that. And she wrote things. Did she stop lynching? People getting lynched? And that means they were being hung. It's a bad thing.
Well, let's continue. And that's a good question, Shaniqua. In 1910, Wells Barnett founded and became the first president of the Negro Fellowship League, which aided newly arrived migrants from the South. We'll be talking about the great African American migration later on. In 1913, she founded and may have been the first black woman suffrage group. It was called the Chicago Alpha Suffrage Club. Chicago Alpha Suffrage Club. From 1913 to 1916, she served as a probation officer of the Chicago Municipal Court. She was militant in her demand for justice for African Americans and in her insistence that it must be won by their own efforts.
It seems like all she did was sit on committees and she was a president of something? Wow! I didn't know that! And it seems like what's wrong? There's anybody looking at me. Oh, okay. Go ahead, Mr. Antonio. I guess next thing you'll be telling us about a school teacher. And she was a school teacher too. Wow!
Well, if it wasn't for women, we wouldn't have a lot of things. And above all, if it wasn't for women who were excellent in education, we wouldn't know anything. So, hey, now the next person I'm going to tell you about is another mother, and she had an attitude which was real good because she was determined to make sure that people would learn. And as we learned, Ida B. Wells did not sit still. When she saw something wrong, she went out and did something about it. Okay? And the next person I'm going to talk about is Mary McLeod Bethune. Mary McLeod Bethune was born on July 10, 1875 in Maysville, South Carolina. She passed away on May 18, 1955 in Daytona Beach, Florida. And she was an African-American educator who was active nationally in African-American affairs and was a special advisor to the United States President Franklin Delano Roosevelt on the problems of minority groups. And that's what she did. And she's talked to him about the problems that minorities had. Mary McLeod was the daughter of a formerly enslaved people. She graduated from Scotta Seminary, which is now Barbara Scotta's College in Concord, North Carolina, in 1893, and from the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago in 1895. She married Albertus Bethune in 1898, and until 1903 she taught as a succession of small southern schools. That means she taught in a lot of southern schools that were small in the South. In 1904, she moved to the east coast of Florida, where a large number of African Americans they were there, and there was a big population of them too at the time. And this was on the Florida's east coast on the railway in Daytona Beach. In October, she opened up a school on her own in the Daytona Normal and the Industrialized Institute for Negro Girls. Having virtually no tangible assets with which to start, she worked tirelessly to build a schoolhouse, solicit help and contributions, and enlisted the goodwill of both African Americans and white communities. And in 1923, the school merged with Cookman Institute for Men, then in Jacksonville, Florida, to form what was known in 1929 as Bethune-Cookman College in Daytona Beach. Bethune remained Mary McLeod Bethune was actually the president of the college until 1942, and again in 1946 and 1947. Under her administration, the college won full accreditation and grew into an enrollment of more than 1,000 students. Now, the most influential, at least in my opinion, wasn't someone who was just a school teacher. Now, Mary McLeod Bethune and Ida B. Wells, they started out as school teachers, but this woman didn't start out as a school teacher. She had something happen to her, and rather than sitting around and complain about it, she made that something into something really, really great. And I can tell you all about her. Her name is Madam C.J. Walker, and let's find out what she did. Madam C.J. Walker invented a line of African American hair products after suffering from a scalp ailment that resulted in her own hair loss. She promoted the products by traveling around the country, giving lectures, demonstrations, and eventually established Madam C.J. Walker's laboratory to manufacture cosmetics and train sales beauticians. Her business accolades, or her business led her to become the first African American woman to become a self-made millionaire. She was known for her philanthropy. Her endeavors included donations towards the construction of the Indianapolis YMCA in 1913. In St. Louis, Breedlove met Charles J. Walker, who worked advertising and would later help her promote her hair care products. During the 1890s, Sarah developed a scalp disorder that caused her to lose much of her hair, and she began to experiment with both home remedies and store-bought hair care products to improve her condition. In 1905, she was hired as a commission agent by Anna Turnbull Malone, a successful black woman. She had hair care products too. She was an entrepreneur, Anna Turnbull Malone, and she moved to Denver, Colorado. While there, Sarah's husband, Charles, helped create advertisement for a hair care product for African American women that was great. Her husband also encouraged her to use a more recognizable name, Madam C.J. Walker, by which therefore she was known. In 1907, Walker and her husband traveled around the South and the Southeast promoting their products, giving lectures and demonstrations of her products. It was called the Walker Method, involving her own formula and something called pomade, brushing, and the use of heated combs. So she did have a couple of things going there. As profits continued to grow, in 1908, Walker opened a factory and a beauty school in Pittsburgh. And by 1910, when Walker transferred her business operations to Annapolis, the Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company had become widely successful with profits that were the modern day equivalent to $7 million of dollars. In Annapolis, the company not only manufactured cosmetics, but also trained sales beauticians. These Walker agents became well known throughout the black community of the United States. In turn, they promoted Walker's philosophy of cleanliness and loveliness as a means of advancing the status of African American women, and she was a relentless innovator. Walker organized clubs and conventions of her own for her own representatives, which recognize not only successful sales, but she was able to give some money to help people with their education. And in 1913, Walker and Charles, unfortunately, they got a divorce, and she traveled through Latin America, the Caribbean, promoting her business and recruiting other teachers to sell her products. While her mother traveled, Aaliyah, she helped facilitate the purchase of a property in Harlem, New York, recognizing the area would become an important base for future business operations. In 1916, upon returning from her travels, Walker moved to her new house in Harlem. You have a question, Calvin?
I have a question. Look, she made all that money and she moved to Harlem? Wow. Well, I like Harlem. That's where I live. But I didn't know that. Okay.
Yes, she was pretty rich, just to let you know. She gave a lot of money away and she helped a lot of people. But to let you know, from there, when she was in Harlem, she would continue to operate her business while leaving the day-to-day operations of her factory to somebody else that was in Indianapolis. Madam C.J. Walker quickly immersed herself in the social and political culture of the Harlem Renaissance. She was a philanthropist, and she founded educational scholarships for children, and she made donations to homes for the elderly, to the NAACP, and the National Conference of the Lynching, on lynching. Well, in other words, they had people that were trying to get people to stop lynching African Americans. And she contributed a lot of money to that organization. She donated the largest amount of money by an African American towards the construction of the Indianapolis YMCA in 1913, and she died from hypertension on May 25th, 1919 at age 51. So she did a lot. And in 1981, the Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company ceased operations. The line of cosmetics and hair care products bearing the name of Madam C.J. Walker Beauty Culture is available now at Sephora retailers. And Walker left 1/3 of her estate to her daughter, who would become a well-known and important figure in the Harlem Renaissance, and the remainder of her charities. And she also, the daughter helped out with the remainder of her charities. And Walker's funeral took place at a place called Villa Luero, and she was buried at Woodlawn Cemetery in the Bronx in New York. Oh, okay. Now, let's go find out what Youth Pastor Emmanuel has to say. Now, we learned about 3 different women that were great women, and here on Mother's Day, we learned about women that made a positive, they did something positive for African Americans, and they were women with a positive attitude. So, they were women with attitudes. Let's find out what a good friend has to say, Youth Pastor Emmanuel. Okay, guys, we learned about 3 great women. They were Ida B. Wells and Mary McLeod Bethune and Madam C.J. Walker. We learned about how they contributed to the African American journey. Now, you may think, well, gee, the two women in the Bible, Lois and Eunice, they weren't that famous like these women, but they were. Because they poured their lives and poured scripture and to their son, Timothy, he became a great leader in the church. And the church grew and grew and grew. That's why we are here today as Christians, because two women who were bold enough to give their son and talk to their son about Christ, or about the Bible, actually did something great. They didn't know that all of the stuff that they taught their son would influence us even today. So, I want to say to everybody, have a happy Mother's Day, and be a mother with an attitude. Have a great day, everybody, and who knows, maybe your mother has a good attitude, and she'll depart something in your life that's going to help you become a great person. Have a good day.